Thank you so much to the subscriber who recommended this story, and the other video recommendations will be coming soon. When we think about lynching in America, we often think of victims who were captured, powerless, and denied any chance to fight back. But in 1923, in the Mississippi Delta, one man refused to go quietly, and before he was captured, he fought an entire mob and stood in resistance during a time when submission was expected. Today, we shine light on the tragic story of Joe Pullen, a man remembered for his courage, resilience, and strength. Almost 22 years before the lynching of Emmett Till, in the same town of Mississippi, another story unfolded, a story that was buried, distorted, and nearly erased. Born around 1883, Joe Pullen was a black sharecropper living in Drew, Mississippi, a small plantation town in Sunflower County. Like many sharecroppers living in the Jim Crow South, images and documentation of their lives were often limited or even erased. Sharecropping wasn't just labor. It was part of a system that kept many black families trapped in cycles of debt, with landowners controlling the accounts and outcomes. Many sharecroppers worked tirelessly, yet never fully receiving the wages they had earned. Joe was also a war veteran, believed to have served with the Buffalo Soldiers, where he developed strong firearms and survival skills. Some reports later described him as an expert marksman. Some historical accounts report that he had a family that included at least 2 sons, and described him as an honest, hard-working man who lived a quiet life. On December 14, 1923, everything changed. Joe Pullen became involved in a dispute with his white landlord, W.T. Saunders. The argument was centered around money during what was known as Settlement Day, a time when sharecroppers and landowners calculated profits from the cotton harvest and settled annual debts. But the system was often manipulated. Landowners could inflate debts, alter the records, and ensure that sharecroppers remained financially trapped. Year after year, W.T. Saunders, along with another man named J.D. Manning, went to Joe Pullen's home and confronted him, claiming he owed around $50. But Joe strongly disputed this debt. He believed he had already been underpaid and cheated for a while, and that the money he had was rightfully used to repair his home and feed his family. The situation quickly escalated. According to some accounts, Joe stood on his front porch with his hands in his pockets while speaking. W.T. reportedly viewed his stance as disrespectful and demanded that he remove his hands from his pockets. Voices were raised, tensions boiled over, and then gunfire. Exactly who fired first is still disputed. The white community at the time portrayed Joe Pullen as the aggressor, but black residents and later historical research suggests that Joe was defending himself on his property against a man who was also armed during a confrontation. But what is known is how it ended. Joe Pullen unalived W.T. Saunders, reportedly with a shot to the heart. He also shot J.D. Manning, who was wounded but managed to escape. J.D. Manning would then alert law enforcement and other white citizens, including a relative, A.L. Manning, and within hours a posse was forming. After the shooting, Joe Pullen didn't just run, he prepared. Some accounts report that he stopped at his mother's home that was nearby to gather additional weapons and ammunition. Carrying 2 firearms and extra rounds, Joe fled roughly 3 miles east of Drew, Mississippi, and headed into dense, swampy terrain, an area of bayous, drainage ditches, and thick undergrowth known as Wild Bill Bayou, often referred to in some accounts as Powers Bayou. It was there that he made his stand. Some reports say he hid in a drainage ditch. Others claim it was inside a hollow tree. Either way, he chose the terrain carefully. Driven by fear, anger, and racial tension, the mob quickly grew in size. Some accounts report that hundreds, possibly up to thousands of men took part in the manhunt. They brought firearms and bloodhounds, expecting a quick capture. But what they got instead was resistance from a one-man army. As the mob closed in, they opened fire, sending hundreds of rounds into the swamp. Some reports estimate as many as 8 to 10 boxes of ammunition was fired, but none of the rounds fired hit Joe. Strategically hidden in position, Joe used the terrain and his marksmanship to his advantage. When the mob got close enough, he fired back. One by one, he struck members of the mob as they approached. What was supposed to be just a manhunt turned into a prolonged battle. Frustrated and taking casualties, the mob called for reinforcements from nearby areas. This time, they came prepared for war. Reinforcements arrived with automatic firearms and a Browning machine gun reportedly sourced from the Mississippi National Guard. As they attempted to set up, Joe continued to fire, reportedly wounding more men. The standoff stretched on for hours. Sources vary, with reports estimating that anywhere from 2 to 12 members of the mob were unalive, while dozens more were wounded. But the exact number remains unknown. By the early morning hours of December 15th, the mob changed their strategy. Realizing they could not outshoot Joe, they decided to flush him out. The mob poured several gallons of gasoline into the area where Joe was hiding and set it on fire. As smoke and flames closed in, Joe was forced out of cover. That's when the gunfire intensified, striking Joe multiple times. After an approximately 7-hour battle of courage and resistance, the standoff came to an end at around 1 a.m. on December 15, 1923. Some accounts state Joe Pullen passed away at the scene. Others say he was still barely alive when he was captured. But what happened next is not disputed. He was tied to a vehicle and dragged back into town. The mob then subjected his body to horrific mutilation. One of the most disturbing details was that his ear was reportedly cut off and displayed in a jar of alcohol in a local storefront. No arrests were made and no one was held accountable. The impact on the Black community was immediate. In the town of Drew and the surrounding areas, fear spread quickly, and for many families, staying was no longer an option. Some fled the state of Mississippi altogether in search of safety and opportunity elsewhere, joining what would become known as the Great Migration. Despite the limited recognition, Joe Pullen's story didn't disappear. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, led by Marcus Garvey, praised him, saying he should have a monument. Civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer, who was just a child at the time, later spoke about the story and its lasting impact. It took a mob of hundreds, possibly thousands, to bring down one man, a man who refused to submit to a system designed to break him. And in December of 1923, Joe Pullen fought against injustice. So this was a story that I've personally never heard before, but the reality is, there's so much of our history that has been hidden, overlooked, and left untold. In a book called The Born, the author briefly discusses the story of Joe Pullen and describes what he calls a culture of silence surrounding the event, mentioning the story was largely erased from official local history, but continued to live on within the Black community, who recognized Joe as a symbol of courage and resistance. The book and other historical research also go on to mention that at least 2 members of the mob in the manhunt for Joe Pullen were relatives of the Manning family, who are mostly known from football. And although later generations are not responsible for the actions of the past, this event is still a buried part of their family's history in Drew, Mississippi, and it raises an important question. How many stories from our history are buried or erased to protect reputations? or to conceal the brutality that existed beneath the surface of the people that we respect or admire. No story should be forgotten, no voice should go unheard. I pray that Joe Pullen rest in peace. Your story may not be often told, but it's just as important. Until the next time, I'm Lock Joel, and thank you for watching Shades of Crime. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and remember to pray. God's listening.